Everybody, it's the 2024 Premier 12 Group A Broadcaster Roundtable. We're through 2 days of the Group A play here in Guadalajara and Tepic. And guess what? All 6 teams in Group A play have 1 win and 1 loss. It's a 6-way tie. We've seen a lot of orchestrated chaos, which is the best when it comes to the Premier 12. I'm here with all 6 commentators. And we are going to have a roundtable just asking what we've seen over the last 2 days and over the next 3 games for these 6 teams. What are the X factors in order for those teams to move on to the Super Round in Tokyo? So we have all the broadcasters here. This should be a lot of fun. First, I'll start with Carter on the other side from Tepic. Carter, you got to call 2 USA games, one a shutout, Puerto Rico beating them 1-0 in the opener. And then yesterday, USA found themselves down early against the Netherlands. They reeled off 12 unanswered runs, and they had a walk-off run rule in the 8th inning. Matt Shaw, obviously the star in that game, with 4 hits, a home run, and 7 runs batted in. But, Carter, what have you seen over the last 2 days that has either surprised you or something that you look to see over the next couple more days in Tepic?
Well, I think for Team USA, we knew that the lineup had great prospects, right? Generally speaking, Mike Scioscia went for a veteran pitching staff and a youthful and prospect-laden lineup. And I think we've seen sort of both sides of the coin for Team USA. In game 1, it was getting on base, drawing walks, getting singles. They could not find the big hit. Now, credit to Puerto Rico. Juan Gonzalez's team's pitching and defense hung tough for the full 9 innings. They had their backs against the wall, and they did an outstanding job to pull through with that game. But we saw in last night's action against the Netherlands what this Team USA lineup is capable of. And I think we knew, at least we expected some power. 3 homers in the game last night, back-to-back shots from Luke Ritter and Ryan Ward. And then, of course, Matt Shaw with his 7 RBIs hits the walk-off run rule clinching homer. But I've been really impressed with the speed that Team USA possesses. They had 6 stolen bases in game 1, despite not having a ton of opportunities to get on base until the late innings. And the speed, particularly of Chandler Simpson, who went first to third on the play and caught up to Tamar Johnson, who's a first-round draft pick and is not slow himself. He's a game breaker. So I think that's something that's encouraging for this United States offense is what's the combination of power on base and speed that you just not usually see at this level or in a typical team. So that's been really exciting. Been impressed by that and been impressed by Puerto Rico's defense in that game 1. I mean, to pull out that game, I thought that was a triumph for Juan Gonzalez's team in their preparation. They had their cards for every single batter on that USA lineup. They were all lined up where they needed to be. It was a big league operation. Obviously, what we expect from a great player and a great manager like Juan Gonzalez. But if you're a fan of pitching and defense, Puerto Rico might be the team for you. So this has been some great baseball we've seen so far.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Carter. Now, Pedro, you are Carter's partner in Tepic. We talked about Team USA's offense. Team USA on the pitching side, they were shut out 1-0 against the Netherlands. Against that 2-1 game, or say that 1-0 game was against Puerto Rico. They only give up 2 runs against the Netherlands. So you do some simple math. That is only 3 runs allowed in 2 games. Pedro, what can you tell us about Team USA's pitching?
Well, I think Carter touched upon this perfectly in terms of the way Team USA has been built. You talk about the experience on the pitching side, young players, good prospects on the offensive side. But in terms of pitching, we've seen 2 games, 2 veteran starters. We've seen Casey Lawrence take the ball in game 2, following Rich Hill, who went 3 innings without allowing a run, leading the way for that first game. But in terms of yesterday's ball game, a little bit different because 2 runs came in the first inning on the first 2 hitters, and we're talking about that around the experience that the Netherlands has. Gregorius had a homer in the first pitch. Jonathan Scope was able to get on base, scored also. So it was a little bit of a different ball game we're seeing with, as you mentioned, also Alex, 12 unanswered runs by Team USA. However, pitching experience was able to keep them in the game. Casey Lawrence was able to turn the page quickly. Obviously, receiving those couple of runs in the bottom of the first inning allowed him to breathe a little bit more and just go out and pitch a couple of more scoreless innings during the rest of the ball game. So definitely on the pitching side, we've seen a little bit more of the experience, particularly with Rich Hill and Casey Lawrence leading the way starting for Team USA.
Yeah, Pedro, I have a follow-up question here. You have 2 experienced pitchers, Casey Lawrence, Rich Hill. Rich Hill, 44 years old. Tamar Johnson, who is the youngest prospect on Team USA, is 20 years old. That's a 24-year difference between oldest player, youngest player. How's the team dynamic for USA with that mix between seasoned veterans and then young prospects who are on their way up?
Well, obviously in baseball, it doesn't matter any level. You're talking about the minors, you're talking about the majors. There's always that factor of been there, done that, leading by experience, leading by example, and showing young kids how to do the things properly in and out of the diamond. So in terms of that dynamic that they have, they're obviously a great examples to lead the way, keep the team calm. No matter if you were down in the ball game early, they had the arms to pretty much allow the team to be during the game, not lose sight of what they needed to do. Obviously, we saw the explosion. Even the first inning, Carter touched upon the back-to-back homers with 2 outs in the bottom of the first inning that allowed the Team USA to come back and start that rally of 12 unanswered runs. But again, being the veteran arms in this team obviously allows them to lead again by example, knowing that everything can, take things calmly. Doesn't matter if you're down by a couple of runs, but yeah, they're a great example for the young kids in terms of showing them how to do things properly and how to guide them on the field.
I appreciate that, Pedro. Now let's go to my counterparts in Guadalajara. We have Tony, we have Craig. We've gotten to see 4 really fun competitive games. They've all been different. Craig, let's start with you. You were on the call for the nightcap last night. Mexico was on the ropes early on. They really struggled against Venezuela in game number 1 of the Premier 12 for them the other night, but they come back and really a wire-to-wire victory. They were up 3-0, trailed 4-3 against Puerto Rico, but came back with 4 unanswered runs, ultimately won 7-5. Craig, the host Mexico, number 2 ranked team in the world. They've gone to the last 2 Premier 12 Super Rounds. How do you think they fared so far?
I was just saying that Mexico really did not show what they're capable of on night 1. I think that was the biggest surprise to me of the tournament, was how flat the performance was on night 1. And then when it came to last night, falling behind 4-3 in the 3rd inning, their answer immediately in the 4th to come up with 3 runs. That was the moment when the Mexico team, I thought, really clicked into gear. And then the bullpen took it from there. 6 1/3 from the bullpen, gives up just 1 run, 4 hits, finished the game with 7 strikeouts in the last 3 innings. RJ Alanis was outstanding, picking up the save, gave up a couple of soft singles, had a high pressure situation with runners on 1st and 3rd, was able to get out of that jam. Jesus Cruz before him, he faced 4 batters, struck out all 4. Victor Gonzalez, Gerardo Reyes, Luis Rodriguez, those guys were really the heroes last night for Mexico, and that's what got me talking about just how strong the bullpen is for Mexico, possibly the strongest of all the teams here in Group A. And that's what you need when you expect play close games, a bullpen that can guide you to victories. And that's exactly what happened last night for Mexico.
I appreciate that, Craig. Tony, you've been on the call for a couple games. You saw Panama's first ever Premier 12 victory. You saw Venezuela the day before victory over Mexico, 8-4 victory. It was really dominant. Now with Panama and Venezuela, what have you seen from those 2 teams that have been able to get them to 1-1? What have you been impressed with the most?
Well, I have to be honest. So far, despite the loss yesterday against Panama, Venezuela's pitching has been outstanding. Orlando Pinto went for 5 scoreless innings against Mexico in just a dominating outing for him. And the bullpen took it the rest of the way. And we just talked about how Mexico did not look good, especially offensively against Venezuela in night 1. And then in game 2 for Venezuela, Jesus Vargas, he pitched really good as well. 5 strong innings as well. 2 runs allowed only, and just a small hiccup with Nivaldo Rodriguez coming up in relief in the 6th inning, which really was the difference against Panama. Did not look good, struggled, but he made adjustments, and he took it also the rest of the way, pitching really well, dominating Panama hitters, even though they lost 4-2. This could be really the foundation for Venezuela to try and move on their pitching and their approach on the plate, especially from what we saw against Mexico and in the first 5 innings against Panama. Now, for Panama, the other way around, they had a long lead against the Netherlands in their first game, and pretty much self-inflicted wounds ended up costing them the game until the end. Yes, it was an extra inning one. They tied it up also in the night, but just the way they lost it, it could have been devastating for them. The way they bounced back against a very strong Venezuela team, like we just said, with good pitching and good approach on the plate, their pitchers confused them. And how about Kenny Rodriguez coming in relief in the fourth inning for Panama, shutting the door and taking control from the left side of the dish. There were many right-handed hitters for Venezuela that just did not have an answer for the lefty. So Panama's pitching and just a way to avoid mistakes against Venezuela showed what they could do. Now, let's not forget this Monday's game between Venezuela and USA, that could very much determine how things are going to be for the rest of Group A play. There could be a scenario where maybe that last Mexico-USA game could be a winner-take-all, depending on what happens tonight between USA and Venezuela. And also that Mexico-Panama tonight's game. I mean, both of these games tonight are just going to be nail-biters.
Yeah, we have the broadcaster roundtable here for Group A of the 2024 Premier 12 brought to you by RAXUS. It is day number 3. All 6 teams in Group A are 1-1. It is pure chaos. It's exactly what we want of the 2024 Premier 12. Just one final question for all of you before we duck out of here. We start prepping into our games. We've seen the majority of these teams are all 1-1. They're even. Now, you get to run differential when talking about the 2 teams that are going on to Tokyo next week. But I want to ask all of you, from what you've seen, what is the one X factor from either team, any of the 6 teams, that you think if they do X, they'll go to the super round? Craig Durham, we'll start with you.
Well, I hate to just ride the same story the whole time, but that Mexico bullpen last night, what they showed up, that is an X factor. And you look at a lot of these teams, they have a lot of arms on the latter stages of their careers, guys in their mid-30s, late 30s, guys who have piled up thousands of innings around the world. Mexico, a lot of guys in their prime, in back end. And I think Benji Hill deserves a lot of credit for the way he has deployed the bullpen through the first days. They don't get the night off tonight where 2 teams do. So he'll need to continue to be smart with how he uses that bullpen. But I think that's one area where Mexico has a little bit of an edge, and that could take them to Tokyo.
Carter, we were talking about this a little off air. You saw 2 different games from Team USA. You know, obviously they were shut out against Puerto Rico. Then they break out for 12 runs in 8 innings against the Netherlands. Do you think it's their offense and pure explosiveness, middle of the order, that if they're clicking, they're seeing the pitch as well, that could take Team USA to the super round and could carry them out to Tokyo?
Well, you said it, if they're clicking, right? And then that's the key. You know, when you have young guys, even for the top prospects that Team USA possesses, they've got to be feeling right. They've got to be in that right frame of mind. And that's one thing that's really challenging in a tournament like this, right? It's such a short format. And so Mike Scioscia has to make these decisions based off of how he saw them in camp for 10 days and how they performed in a couple of games. I don't envy that task when you're putting a lineup together. But if Matt Shaw is any indication, the way that he is seeing the baseball right now, we knew that the Cubs' top prospects had power to all fields, but seeing it in person and seeing it in this tournament with the 7 RBIs last night has been impressive. And if they can follow his lead and put together that depth where if you're going up against a team's bullpen that might be a little bit taxed going into the latter stages of the tournament, when you have a lineup that doesn't have any breaks, doesn't have any rest, and is going to make you make pressure pitches for a full 9 innings, that's something that's really going to be difficult to contend with. And so I think that's the number one thing for Mike Scioscia's team. I also think we talked about the pitching staff. It hasn't just been the starters. Pedro was right to call out the great starting pitching. The long relief and bridging the gap has been there too. So I think the pitching depth has been encouraging for Mike Scioscia's team, and that's huge in this tournament for any team where you're not necessarily going to have starters going 7-8 innings. You're going to be seeing a little bit more of a collaborative effort. So those are a couple of things that I think the Team USA folks are thinking about right now.
Yeah, Carter talked about Team USA. Pedro also into peak. You saw the Netherlands. You saw Puerto Rico. Is there anything that sticks out with either of those 2 teams that if they do their strengths well, they'll head out to Tokyo?
Well, in terms of Puerto Rico, call me an old school kind of guy, but pitching and defense. And I was talking about this with Juan Gonzalez. We all know his career, his offensive profile as a player, big home run hitter. Team Puerto Rico is not built as a home run hitting ball club. Put the ball in play and wait for that clutch hitting. But for them, as we saw, pitching and defense, exactly, they put in a clinic on day 1 of the Premier 12. So obviously for me, Puerto Rico has to have that advantage. As long as they're pitching, they're having their great defense, good things will happen to them. In terms of the Netherlands, we're talking about it yesterday before the ball game. Coincidentally, that's exactly what happened. They're going to go as far as their experience can carry them on the offensive side. Gregorius, Scope, they managed to score runs in the first inning. That was it for them. But after pulling off also that comeback in game one of the Premier 12, obviously for them, they're counting more of the experience side. And honestly, how far can that combo of Scope and Gregorius can take them into this first half?
I really appreciate that. All right, last but not least, Tony, Craig talked about Mexico. There's two teams that we haven't really talked about. It was Panama and Venezuela, their X factors. You talked about Venezuela's pitching, their starting pitching in particular, but Panama, they get their first win in Premier 12 history yesterday. They're going to need a couple more to go to Tokyo. What do they have to do?
Well, that was an emotional win for them. And again, they were riding on their pitching as well. Darío Grajal kind of got into a slump there in the middle of the fourth, and then their relief pitching did a pretty good job. Now, I'm going to go here and say that veteran approaches in the batter's box will make the difference for Panama if they were to advance. Prevent Tejada. I mean, we're talking about a 35-year-old guy that has been everywhere and knows everywhere. I will say this, though. Defensively, he had a few hiccups, maybe some nerves, trying to help his country get their first win. Now that that's behind them, we've talked about experience and pitching in this tournament. Many of these players know each other very well. They sometimes even play together, either in winter ball or in summer ball. Probably not in the USA anymore, but they have a lot of MLB experience, or at some point in minor league systems of MLB clubs. So with that said, I think clutch hitting for Panama, from what we saw in their relief pitching after a really disappointing outing against the Netherlands in game one, they bounced back really well. Now they need that clutch hitting, because even though Venezuela was a team that left a lot of players on base against Panama, Panama did enough to win with 4 runs against Venezuela. Can they do it again tonight against a very good pitching Mexican team, like Craig said? It will be yet to be seen. But I believe that clutch hitting in key moments for Panama, and then just trying to shut the opponent's offense out for the rest of the game with their relief pitching, that would be the key for Panama if they were to advance.
Well, it's been a lot of fun over the last couple days. It'll be a lot of fun over the next few days. It'll be a lot of fun tonight. Now, we get the morning, afternoon off, but in Tepic, it's the United States taking on Venezuela. And then in Guadalajara, it is Mexico taking on Panama. 2 huge games tonight. Group A, all 6 teams, 1-1. After 2 days, they play 5 overall. Again, you're watching the 2024 Premier 12 brought to you by the WBSC and RAXUS. Fans, if you are watching this for the first time, you can watch on DAZN, you can stream on Game Time, and you can listen to all of us talk about baseball over the next couple days. So fans, keep on tuning in. It'll be a lot of fun. And for us, got to get our voices ready. The 2024 Premier 12 Group A, full swing. Having a lot of fun here in Mexico. Tune in, everybody.